Yeah,
so
we're big fans of maps.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rick Dublin that started it has been here 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, and he's a big proponent. And they're really proponents of MDMA as the therapy, whereas other institutions are bigger on the other psilocybins and things like that.
And stuff.
But it's a fascinating tool to use to get you back to those memories without having the triggers. Right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so again, like everything, caveat with all this stuff is I'm not prescribing this. This is my experience. There's a lot of data to go along with it right now. I think the last time from that study that's done at Bellevue, which is the most thorough scientific study on this right now, I think it's a 78 or an 82% cure rate for people experiencing PTSD, which is an extraordinary number when you look at that based on any other forms of treatment that are out there. And that was my experience. Was it finally got me to untether from the all of the wires that are connected with that experience. So now I can actually, I could never have been able to talk about this experience before. I only waited to talk about it publicly until after, because talking about it while you're still going through it, I'm a bubbling mess in this chair. That's not really helpful. But now that I'm on the other side, I can talk about it, and I'm okay with that. Wow. If there's anything, if there's ever anything that gets me emotional or something, it's when I talk about my kids and that experience with Molly and Sophie, and because you don't want to see your kids hurt. So that was extraordinarily helpful to get to the other side of it. And there's still other forms of treatment that I'll work through with it as well. Because the next forms, because it didn't necessarily, it's not that it cured the depression side of things, because that's a different thing.
Yeah.
The trauma and the PTSD are different from depression itself. So I'm a big proponent of it, but like everything, educate yourself. I don't know, I'm not as great of a marketer as some other people, I guess, would be, because I'm like, this cures everything or whatever. I want a more mentally and psychologically responsible group of people that are, buying something. And so I just say, do your homework. Yeah, which you should be. Yeah.
And it's an MDMA session in an environment with a therapist. And they really walk you through a lot of these things.
They walk you through. There's two types. There's therapy while you're doing it, and then there's quiet therapy, which means that they sit with you while you're going through the experience itself. And that's the one that I was involved with, was that side.
And you can talk if you want?
You can talk if you want, yeah, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
okay.
It comes up.
Did you?
Yeah.
And they just listen?
And they
don't say anything?
No, they'll maybe say, go on, or something. That might be it. And it's even hard to remember because, it takes you into such a deep, psychological state. The very first time I took it, to be just frank, it was the very first time in my entire life where I felt deep levels of self-love, which, not to get woo-woo with people, but it was to feel that way about you, and then that gets transmuted into the world around you. What a phenomenal anchoring point for me, that once you get out of that experience and you're working through your day and you still have to deal with challenges, that exists, that experience exists inside of you, is so powerful. It was for me.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, I think MDMA got dismissed as a party drug because that's what people knew it as, and it was just that thing. But I remember talking to friends of mine even 10 years ago, where one guy would be like, yeah, I did MDMA last night. I was like, it was a good time. Yeah, but I finally forgave my girlfriend for breaking up with me, and I feel like this weight was lifted off my chest. And it really changed his life, and it was just like, oh, that's an interesting data point. And then Rick Dublin actually has this story where his grandmother, I think, was dying, and she was in the hospital, and he wanted to have an MDMA experience with her. And the doctor said, no, you can't do that. And he said, okay, I'm gonna take MDMA and be with my grandmother in the hospital, just her sober, me with MDMA. And he said it was one of the most beautiful experiences they ever had together, because he could be almost a child.
100%.
And if you understand what I just said, then you understand, I think, more about that substance, because he could be, and you could actually have an experience with only one person doing it, and a weird connection that they never had before.
Yeah.
And in some way, a beautiful experience for both of them. So So there's something there, and Rick's been working so hard at it. I mean, they were doing it in Dallas in the 80s before it was made illegal. It was like a real party drug right in that city, and they knew there would be like a bowl of them on the counter in a club, and they knew this is going to be made illegal in a few years, and they know we're going to be fighting for this for the next like 40 years. And now they're showing people through these PTSD studies.
Well, even the FDA, I think it was after the second trial phase at Bellevue, came back and said this is the most definitive evidence that we've seen for a cure for people with PTSD. And so its path to regulation is going to be pretty quick, hopefully, because it's going to be very hard for, say, at least in America, Congress to sit there with nothing but veterans in the audience. Try to go back to your constituents and say, no, we're not going to help these people overcome the tremendous horrors that they've had to go through so that they can live their lives in a more productive way.
Yeah, and I think that was part of Rick's strategy, is you use first responders, fire department, veterans, PTSD, and use that as an example. Again, politically, it's hard to ignore. Even though the federal ban on a lot of these drugs is hard to get through. It's got some possibilities.